You're listening to 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College in Garden City, New York. I'm Bill McIntyre here with John Gallo, bringing you news stories about Long Island and about Long Islanders. And we'd like to welcome the Albany Bureau Chief for Newsday, Mr. Yancey Roy. How are you this morning, Nancy?
I'm good, Bill. Busy.
Oh, yeah. And because we only have you for a short while, let's dive right in because we got a lot of things to cover, things we'd like to know about. Well, of course, okay, we have the governor's issues. The governor is embroiled in his thing. How is that going with
two scandals? The nursing home one, but now the evolution and the specific sexual harassment allegations. Can you give our listeners a kind of timeline of where we stand now and how that's evolved so rapidly over the last week or so, Yancey?
Right. He's confronting things coming down the tracks on him on several levels. One, Charlotte Bennett, a former aide, came forward just last Saturday with specific allegations of Cuomo's behavior in one-on-one meetings with her where she thought he was making very clear sexual overtures to her. He's 63, she's 25. Her complaints alone, I shouldn't say alone, but her complaint was the main one, rather, that speared calls for the Attorney General to be authorized to conduct an investigation of the governor. He resisted at first, tried to do two different attempts to control who was going to be the investigator. That raised people's attention and saying, they would even move to try to impeach him if he didn't give over full authority to Tish James. He finally relented, and he did. He had his press conference Wednesday, first appearance since all of this has happened. He apologized. He said his behavior was, if it caused problems, it was unintended. He never meant to make advances. That was on Wednesday. And then Thursday night and Friday morning, as we speak, she talked with CBS's evening news anchor, Norah O'Donnell. Pretty bombshell interview that they divided into two parts. Thursday night, she described being in the office with him and feeling terrified and feeling like she had to get out of there as soon as possible. Friday morning, in part two of the interview, she described him as a textbook abuser, said his temper and anger ruled the office, and gave a little bit more detail on this. At the same time, also last night, Thursday night, almost at the same time, first reported by the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, but now it's out there for everyone, is that reports that the governor's high-ranking staff altered nursing home reports to tamp down the number of deaths recorded at nursing homes, getting them recorded at hospitals rather than nursing homes to lower, the perception of what was going on in nursing homes. And at the same time, as we talk here Friday morning, the Senate and the Assembly are gaveling in to consider a bill to curtail a lot of his pandemic powers. So, like I say, it's coming at the governor in multiple tracks right now.
Yeah, it certainly has been a very rapid change in public opinion, too, of the governor from where he was at the beginning of the pandemic, even winning an Emmy and, having very, very high, approval ratings to where he is now. And of course, these are very, very serious allegations that are definitely going to be fully vetted by the Attorney General. And it has been interesting to see some of the political kind of partnerships that were unexpected. A lot of obviously the Republicans, clearly see this as maybe an opportunity to further, again, call for impeachment, but also a lot of progressives and Democrats who were somewhat unexpected, including Kathleen Rice out here on Long Island. Do you just want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there's some folks who have been very critical of the governor from the progressive left for a lot of things, and they were among the first to call for him to resign over this. But I think the most notable one is the one you just mentioned, Kathleen Rice, a Democrat from Nassau County, congresswoman, a one-time ally of the governor. She was his choice to be attorney general back in 2014. She headed became the controversial Moreland Commission on campaign contributions several years earlier in Cuomo's tenure. She has been the most high-profile one to say he should resign now. Notably, Jay Jacobs, who also is from Nassau County, and he is the state Democratic chairman. He has tried to quell the anger and said, look, there's an official investigation. I would ask everyone to withhold comment now until we get the results of that. But we don't know how long that's going to take. That could take months, weeks, months. We don't know it right now, how long this will take. Tish James, because she's got to actually appoint an outside investigator, probably going to take some time to look for someone with no ties that could be undermine any relevant findings down the road. So that might take a while for the outcome of that investigation to happen.
Okay. And then just real quick, there also is a parallel federal investigation that now is underway, correct? Regarding specifically the nursing home and data issue. Yep.
Right. That was launched after the administration publicly admitted that they had withheld data from state legislators.
Yeah.
We don't know where that will go either. I mean, that could go anywhere from like just a silly, dumb strategic mistake to withhold data to, I don't know, something more serious.
Interesting. Yeah. Definitely caught a lot of attention then. And to think, that was already a massive scandal, to see that, now where we're at. Bill,
we should make a point there also that the governor has talked about the data issue and looked to downplay it and said, look, it was a calculation of where they died. Was it a nursing home or was it a hospital? He even used the phrase, who cares, which ended up on the cover of the New York Post. His point being, look, for the poor families and the patients, they died, and it's not necessarily relevant whether it was at the nursing home or the hospital. But Assemblyman Richard Gottfried, who is the longstanding health committee chairman in the Assembly, has tried to take up that point. And the other day, in a session where they were passing nursing home bills, said, look, if someone dies out on, let's say, he didn't say this, but let's say Hempstead Turnpike, since we're talking Nassau. If they die in a car crash in Hempstead Turnpike, but you end up recording their deaths as occurring at Nassau Medical Center and not on Hempstead Turnpike, well, then you're presenting a misleading view of what's going on with traffic safety. And the parallel there is that you would be presenting a misleading view about what's going on in nursing homes if you just say they died at the hospital.
That is a good point. It's crazy to see, from Miss Alyssa De La Rosa, one of the most trusted advisors, to have that audio leak. I know what she believed was a private discussion between, I believe, Democratic state senators and legislators, and then the whole debacle with Ron Kim, the Queens Assembly member, which again was earlier and now seems, kind of a million miles away. But yeah, it's definitely been very concerning. But do you think, what are the impacts in terms of the budget and the power dynamic too? I know, like you said, that the legislature in likely a few minutes will gavel in to make that decision to rescind those emergency powers earlier than initially anticipated in April.
Yeah, this is all occurring in an important timing context. This isn't, August in some off election year where nobody in Albany to do anything anyway. This is, in fact, just less than 4 weeks before the state budget is due, where the governor and the legislators are trying to make important decisions about how to use, frankly, what's been a massive amount of federal aid, which has kind of offset some of the revenue flow problems for the state. Revenue is improving right now. There's a questions of how to use that, especially for schools and healthcare and colleges and other factors right now. That's usually the biggest story going in state politics, but right now it's, I don't know, third burner or so.
Yeah.
But it doesn't change the deadline. The deadline is here April 1.
Yeah. But do you think, again, that this just the cloud, even if everything, regardless of how it actually is determined, will it not give both Democrats and Republicans in the legislature more leverage, just by default, having more in the legislative process this year and the budget?
Well, the governor, by the nature of the state constitution and the way the budget is drawn, the governor's office has a whole lot of power in the budget. I've always tried to liken it to, if you look at a deck of cards, it's like the governor holds 50 of the cards and the assembly and the Senate usually about one apiece. But what also is a fact, and that doesn't change, but what does change is the level of, I think, anger with the governor in both the Senate and assembly, not only about the sexual harassment, not only about nursing homes. But in a small little thing that happened this week, which would kind of get lost in all of this, the Senate and Assembly announced they had a bill to curtail his powers. The governor went out there Wednesday and portrayed it as an agreement with himself and the two houses, which was immediately shot down by both legislative leaders. And I think on another level, just irked a lot of Democratic members for him to try to claim that it was a negotiation. I mean, at a time when he needs as many legislative allies and friends as he can gather while he's in turmoil, that certainly didn't help.
Yeah, the bottom line. Okay, so let's just remind our listeners that they are listening to this week's Long Island News, and we are here with Yancey Roy from Newsday, the lead Albany bureau reporter, and we're on 90.3 WHPC, Bill McIntyre and myself, John Gallo. And I know we only have you for a few more minutes. Like you said, busy time and session starting. And Bill, obviously I want to hear your thoughts and your other questions, but I just want to know, is it any legs to I know that what's being tossed around in social media, Zeldin from Long Island, a Trump strong ally, is considering, is that true, a run maybe against the governor? Is that just maybe speculation trying to get his name out there, or what do you think?
Well, he said that he's exploring a run. He's not the only Republican who has said that. A Republican Congressman, Tom Reed of Corning, who has said the same thing. Also, it's been interesting that Tom Reed has come in from Washington more than once since the new year to stand with state legislative Republicans in the Senate and Assembly and, go after Cuomo on various issues, usually the nursing home issue. So there are Republicans who are thinking about it, but you know what? There's some context that needs to be explained there as well. The census numbers are going to be finalized soon.
True.
And that triggers reapportionment, in which number of congressional seats gets shuffled. New York is going to lose at least one seat, maybe two seats this year in reapportionment. And then once that's determined, district lines are drawn. And because Democrats here control the legislature, it's widely seen as Republicans who are on the firing line, if you will, with one or two of their seats being eliminated or combined. And I think it's no coincidence that there has been talk about where those seats will be combined. And you're talking, one scenario is Tom Reed and John Katko in the southern tier of New York and central New York. Another one that you're hearing is the sort of North Country, Mohawk Valley, which would be Elise Stefanik and Claudia Tenney. So I don't think it's necessarily a political consequence or a coincidence, I should say, that some of the people who say they might be thinking about running are also people whose congressional seats might be on the line pretty soon.
That's a very good point. And it is still a while out. Obviously, the governor's not up for re-election this year, but it would be for next year, is my understanding. So,
right.
Okay, thank you.
But the redistricting process will begin at some point this year.
Yes, most definitely. I know Gianaris and other senators have been talking a lot about, where they are and, what they intend to, hopefully see happen. Bill?
There was a law, I think, that they just passed in the House yesterday about voting and, the gerrymandering, all of this stuff. Mm-hmm. You think that has a shot at all in the Senate?
In Washington?
Yeah.
Yes, sure it does. I mean, this harkens back to what we just saw in the presidential election, and there was an expansion of mail-in voting and other opportunities because, frankly, people were worried about the pandemic and going and stand in line and vote in person, and it was seen as a way to get more participation. And now you've seen Republican-controlled legislatures in various states trying to clamp down on that. And so Congress is looking to counteract that with a bill that would prevent what essentially are efforts to sort of give less opportunity to vote.
Yeah. Interesting.
And I guess the other thing, how are Donald Trump's legal troubles progressing in New York?
We know you had a piece on that.
Yeah, we wrote about that. The last milestone was about a week, 10 days ago, where the Supreme Court decided not to step in and block Manhattan DA Cy Vance from obtaining 8 years of the ex-president's tax records. That very day, or maybe it was the next day, he executed a subpoena and was granted all of those records. And so that probe is the main one right now to find out if there was any tax fraud or any other possible criminal transgressions by the ex-president. Meanwhile, you've got Attorney General Tish James also looking at a civil case where, in sum, the main allegation is sort of that Trump inflated the value of his properties in Westchester and in New York City so that you could get breaks on insurance and get breaks on a conservation easement, which allows you to get a tax break on one end. And then on the other end, when it came time to pay your property tax value, you deflated the price so that the rate that you would pay for your property tax was lower. And looking at that as a possible fraud as well. And there are other cases also related to January 6th and the attempt to block the Electoral College vote as well. So the troubles are deepening on several fronts there.
Oh, yeah. And we're seeing more and more testimony on what happened on the 6th. And it seems to be more and more damning the more information we hear in a lot of ways from the response that day. So thank you as always, Yancey. Like I said, we know your time is limited. We know it's a busy end to the week for you and for those up in Albany that they're in that special session today. I know that they don't normally like to be up there on Fridays, but thank you as always. And let's just tell our listeners, what you see happening the next week, what you'll be following. And, obviously we want everyone to subscribe to Newsday and follow you at Yancey Roy on Twitter, where we know you get a lot of updates. But tell us what you see coming and what you'll be reporting on next week.
Well, I think we just all have to watch the coming developments on all of these stories. It's a little hard to tell where they're going to go. Of course.
So, all right, we will certainly be watching your reporting. And like I said, always appreciate your perspective. It is certainly invaluable. You and your colleague, Michael Gormley, and everyone else at Newsday shedding some light on very fast moving developments in state government and everywhere else that impacts Long Island.
Stay safe out there.
Yep,
Stay safe out there while you're doing your
Anthony.
thing. Yeah. And I'm sure, and I hope we'll talk to you very soon.
No problem. Anytime, guys.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Be well.
Well, and of course, we want to thank Yancey and Newsday for, letting us talk to the people who investigate the stories and find the stories, write the stories. Wow. So, John, where are we?
That is the question. And it's interesting, Yancey, who's one who doesn't have a crystal ball, but, is as close to having one as possible in terms of what he sees going forward, and what they see on the ground from the Albany Bureau. But even them, I think that they get somewhat taken by surprise on how fast this all kind of evolved. It really is dumbfounding in a way to see, especially, and I forgot to ask him, the allegations. Some of them are stemming back during the pandemic, like while he was at the peak of his kind of popularity. So it's different than if, you said, okay, while he was, 20 years ago and he wasn't in power, and it still wouldn't be right, of course. But, to know that meanwhile, someone could be so disconnected in theory, again, allegedly, could have that kind of cognitive dissonance. To see that you're trying to make better out of a situation, but then still put yourself in this terrible situation by putting women in a situation that should never happen, if so proven. So it's crazy, though. It's certainly nuts. It's a crazy time for me at work. It's a crazy time for all the reporters up there. And we'll have to keep watching. But I am quite surprised to see where it's gone. And I don't think by the governor kind of not saying anything that it really helped. It probably made things worse. But what are your thoughts? What do you see, Bill?
I don't know. Of course, you see all the knee-jerk reactions. You see, of course, all the Republicans getting up, and so in my mind, I just dismiss that. No,
and that's what I think they were able to get away with a long time with the nursing home issue in specific, saying, "Oh, this is quote unquote a Republican hit job. This is the New York Post. This is all these kind of the traditional kind of opponents or kind of." Political rivals of the governor and of the Democratic caucus, but that's gone out the window. He started to pick fights on the nursing home issue with the Democratic Assembly member, as I mentioned, in Queens. There had already been a call from progressives to further investigate that issue, and they had kind of formed a coalition with a lot of the Republicans. And, with the Me Too movement and with the Democrats, really kind of, for lack of a better sense, wrapping themselves in that banner of equality and, women's equity and combating sexual harassment and sexual violence, like we saw with the Harvey Weinstein case and others, that they really kind of penned themselves into a corner where they can't kind of be hypocritical and say that, we only want to, be mad at President Trump when he has an allegation and then not be mad at our own Democrats, like, for example, Al Franken in the past, who got removed from Senate, or now with some calls with Cuomo, being called as well. So that's, I guess kind of where we're at, but we'll have to watch. So,
that's funny. That's exactly the guy I thought of. I thought of Al Franken this morning. And that was Kirsten Gillibrand that really... They haven't actually, we could have asked them, but they haven't actually come out necessarily against him yet. They're all, in favor. And I say all, I mean, Senator Schumer and Senator Gillibrand, they're in favor of the investigation, but they haven't called for any impeachment yet. And I don't anticipate them to do so unless there are further bombshells that are kind of, irrefutable in these findings. So. All right, Bill. Like I said, that'll take more time. We'll come back to that another day because it ain't going anywhere for the governor and therefore for us and Long Island. But let us know. I think we'll start with a little bit of what's in the papers most recently. Actually, here's a story in Newsday, the governor about easing rules in a push to reopen. So basically, this article by Bart Jones and David Rees-Hale talks about domestic travelers to New York will not be required to quarantine if they're vaccinated. Gathering limits will be relaxed across the state, and events at more entertainment venues will be allowed to resume with limited numbers. Governor Andrew Cuomo announced the moves Wednesday as he continued reopening the state's battered economic and social life, even as he agreed to limit his emergency powers and apologized over sexual harassment accusations. He's been on the defensive amid a firestorm related to those allegations and decisions concerning the placement of nursing home residents in the pandemic. After about a week, largely away from the limelight, the governor held his first briefing in days to push his coronavirus agenda forward, trying to highlight the progress made against the virus. He said, whatever order I put in place, the legislature can repeal in 24 hours or whenever they choose, he said, of an agreement to limit his emergency powers to manage the COVID-19 crisis. He said those emergency powers to issue executive orders will be extended to the point where the federal government declares an end to the pandemic. Cuomo announced the state is adjusting limitations on residential and public gatherings. Starting March 22nd, the limit on outdoor residential gatherings will go from 10 to 25 people. The indoor limit of 10 people per gathering will remain the same. The limit on gatherings at public spaces will go from 50 to 100 people indoors and from 50 to 200 people outdoors. All gatherings will continue to require virus prevention measures such as mask wearing and social distancing. What did you want to say, John?
No, I was just making an acknowledgement to that. You can continue. Well, I'll have a comment afterwards.
Well,
unless that's the meat of the potatoes, I think, right there. Those kind of figures. I was just gonna say it's interesting, thinking that what we see in Texas, I think Alabama announced it, and I want to say maybe Mississippi. And seeing that they've completely pulled back their mask mandates and a lot of other kind of social distancing protocols, but. I don't know, Bill. Do you think that these changes, obviously, we're happy the numbers are getting better. As we mentioned before, we're below where we were during Thanksgiving. But do you think that some of these rollbacks have any, are impacted by the political scandals? I've heard some people say that. What do you think? Just, kind of.
Well, don't you get that impression? I mean, somebody gets in trouble. I don't remember exactly when it was. Somebody said something about the governor in the previous weeks. And all of a sudden that same day, the restaurants were going to be able to stay open till 10 o'clock instead of 8. You do see those corollaries. But as human beings, we're always looking for patterns. And so you don't know if is that the case? A politician got a little heat and then decided to relax the rules a bit. But I do think no matter what they do, New York could open everything up today and business as normal. In 3 days, when the numbers start going through the roof, that's when the clampdowns are going to happen. So it all depends on, I think Texas is shooting themselves in the foot.
That's the concern. That's a big, big state by definition, so I don't know. Like I said, I hope it works out. Obviously, everyone wants the best, but we just don't want to see us kind of do the the high step into the end zone, to use maybe a Texas-friendly kind of football metaphor. Before you actually score. Because that's the thing where if it opens up the new can of worms with all these variants that people are talking about, the South Africa variant, the I think there's a variant that's kind of between New York and New York City, and I believe another one that I know is being talked about, the UK variant. So I don't know, Bill. Yeah. It is certainly, again, good that things are getting better, but we want them to continue getting better. And
yeah, well, and on the, it's like, we talk about the entertainment industry, and because I've been hearing some of these bands, and they are starting to get some work. A guy playing his folk guitar, a 50-person audience is probably pretty big or pretty good.
No, totally. And people I think more people show up to an open mic than ever, probably, because they just are looking for anything,
Yes. Yes.
But the point is that I don't want to give the wrong date, but I do know movie theaters are opening up this weekend, is my understanding, in New York State. That has now been allowed. And going forward, I want to say, what was it, April? I believe the beginning of April, other cultural venues, including comedy clubs, and I believe if comedy clubs, then music clubs will be allowed to reopen. So that's right. That's what I think I heard. Again, don't quote me on the dates, but is that what you're hearing too, Bill?
That's what I've been hearing, yeah. And it's, of course, slowly phased in. I mean, like they're saying here, indoors would be the numbers going up from 50 allowed to 100 allowed. The other thing is that with the vaccines and all this stuff, just because you get vaccinated doesn't mean you can take your mask off and you can start, getting too close to people. You have to keep all of those safety things have to stay the same, even though you got vaccinated.
That is what the experts say, but I think I don't like the arguments of what would you call it? Like, this is the nature of humans, or this is just human nature, I guess is how you'd say it. But at the same time, I think there is just something to everyone being exhausted and saying, okay, well, it took me so much difficulty to just get a vaccine. Now that I got it, let me just a little bit, kind of slowly. And then as soon as you keep doing it, the more and more it becomes, oh, okay, I don't really need this. And again, thankfully, if you got the vaccine, you in theory should be fine. But the concern is, will you be a vector? Will you be technically infected? Be asymptomatic because you have the antibodies and immunity, and therefore not realize that you're asymptomatically spreading COVID to other people. So it's certainly, something that we're going to have to keep watching. And it's certainly, strange to think that some states are, fallout blanket saying, what, we're done. But, we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully it's not one of those mission accomplished Iraq war moments. We'll see.
I think the other thing that we're all waiting to hear is whether or not this is going to be like the flu. Are we going to be, going through a vaccine thing every season?
That's a good point. And I still need to get clarity about that, to be honest. I remember we were talking with Robert Brodsky a while back now, and the question was whether or not, because it's a coronavirus, the RNA technology is still a little bit confusing, and to be honest, to me to some extent. But traditional vaccines, like a flu vaccine, they have to change the formula every year to meet the most likely strains of the flu that people will encounter. And he made it seem that his reporting and that experts, as I had heard earlier, were saying that this might have to be something you have to get boosters relatively frequently for. I don't know if every year, but think of like a tetanus shot. You have to go back every couple of years, every 5 years or something like that, whatever it may be, to get that type of immunity. So I don't know. Like I said, we will certainly continue to follow that. Let me just bring up some other quick headlines. I know, Bill, while you try to find another story, I think we're going to reference in the paper there from yesterday. But let me just put out there that it had been reported that a couple of things had happened in the federal government from the time we most recently spoke. I know we've been speaking a lot about the minimum wage issue over the duration of the show. And there is some progress, but there is some setbacks. If folks had heard that last week, it was trying to be attached to the larger new relief package, the COVID relief package, but the Senate parliamentarian, who's like an unelected advisor, Bill. Yeah. Yep. Okay. So unelected advisor ruled that the minimum wage increase could not move forward as a budget item. I guess they just said that, it wasn't something that was like legal. So it's going to need 60 votes to pass. And it essentially is something that seems like it's going to be put back burner, at least on this piece. But Senator Schumer did say that they're looking for alternatives, such as potentially a penalty for corporations who don't pay the $15 an hour as a budget item. So that's an update that I want to have people know.
I also think the first thing we need to look at, too, is exactly the parliamentarian, first of all, is not an elected official, position.
Yeah.
The parliamentarian is an advisory role.
Correct.
So the parliamentarian's decision it only has weight if a certain amount of senators or Congress people abide by his decision.
Yeah.
So then we get back to partisan politics.
Mm-hmm.
This reminds me of the memo. Remember the memo that we spoke about from the Justice Department that says you can't indict a sitting president.
Yeah.
This was a memo. This was not a law passed. This was not anything but a memo. And that irks me to this day.
Yeah. Oh, no.
I found a memo. Where'd you find it? In the third drawer of somebody's desk in the corner of an office nobody uses. But here it is.
Yep.
And this whole debacle hinges on the idea that you can't indict a sitting president. And then, of course, when he gets out of office, now you can't indict him now. Well, he's not a president anymore.
Interesting. Okay. Did you see where in France, Sarkozy, the former prime minister, he actually, facing a year now in prison potentially for corruption and other types of charges. So it does happen in other countries. France has a specific history with the French Revolution and their kind of, political dynamics there are different in Europe than they are here in the U.S., of course.
Yeah.
But again, Brazil, other places, it certainly isn't as unique as it would be here. But I hear what you're saying. I know it's frustrating to think that, if the legislators, theoretically had the will to be, kind of buffed by someone who, like you said, it was an unelected kind of unknown individual, in the Senate themselves. But we'll see, because I know it's an important issue, and I get that other states are making the cases that especially for, let's say, I don't know, New Mexico, or let's say West Virginia, that business is tough right now. Paying someone $15 there is different than paying someone $15 in Seattle, New York City, et cetera, et cetera. People can have that argument. I hear what they're saying to an extent. But like I said, I think that's still going to keep being moved on. And hopefully we'll see some change at the federal level. Because again, clearly it's way out of date. With $7, and some change versus,
even at, we spoke about this last week. Yeah, exactly. Even at $15, by the time we get done with the conversation.
Exactly.
Where can anybody live on $15 an hour? Although most of the people who are in, let's say, well-paying jobs, I mean, they're salaried employees, so they don't usually break their salary down to an hourly rate.
Correct.
But in those cases, I mean, if you want to look at CEOs, it would take your breath away, making $50,000 an hour. That's why they don't want to break it down to how much money they make per hour, because it's an obscene number. And then to go and talk about $15 being too much.
No, I get it. And I know you wanted to give an update on a story I know that we spoke about with Mark Harrington last week in terms of, regulations for utility companies. But let me just also mention that there has been a proposal, and there has been a little bit of pushback also from the federal government. New York State Senator Majority Leader Schumer had, alongside with Senator Elizabeth Warren, former presidential candidate, had been calling for a cancellation of $50,000 of student debt. That is what their policy is on the table. That's their starting point. The Biden administration had pushed back against that pretty strongly, and they said that that's basically a non-starter, $50K. I think, again, I don't want to necessarily say the wrong thing, but I believe that they were more comfortable with starting at $10K. I think that's where they are at. So, I mean, it would do something, but for someone who has, post-grad debt of $110K, it's clearly,
this is classic, spout the progressive line, and then when it actually comes to the rubber meeting the road,
come back.
Beholding to your corporate overmasters, you kind of, this is Democrats consistently have no spine. They'll put out the sign and say, we're going for the gold, and then they don't even reach for the tin.
Yeah, well, and that's something, again, regardless of, political affiliation, I think people do, I don't want to say appreciate, but, do see as a strength of a lot of times the Republican and the conservative delegations that they really push for everything. They want the whole thing, and, they'll find compromise somewhere closer to their goal versus if you try to start a little bit more towards the middle, like we saw with the Affordable Care Act, trying to get Republican favor, under the Obama administration, knowing they wouldn't get a single payer act. And meanwhile, that still got all dismantled by the Trump administration. So I think that is something that I do hear, Democrats and Republicans saying that, they would like to avoid if possible. But like you said, like and doing are different things. So,
well, I kind of expect, I expected this from the Biden administration because they're Democrats, and Biden is a middle of the road. Well, maybe a little more toward the right than the left. He talks a good game, but when it comes to the rubber meeting the road, it's always back it down. Oh, we can't get what we wanted. So I don't know. What is that? So at the end of the day, he can say, well, I tried.
No, I mean, that's always been the criticism, I know, on the state level and at the national level. And, it's interesting because plenty of people see, obviously, the Biden administration is too progressive. Obviously, progressives see him as too conservative. And the thing is, though, that Biden, in particular, being a very, very long tenured senator from an early age, has certainly built his reputation on being, quote unquote, one of those reach across the aisle kind of guys, which can have its benefits. But at the same time, it only really gets you so far. And it's interesting because as of now, they're not really relying on the Republican support. They're going to try to push things through the reconciliation process, having to rely then on a vote from the vice president, Harris, to kind of make that a crucial vote. Right. So it's
that's why I was curious about the bill about because this is something that's gone on forever. Every time the election comes around, we see the Republicans gerrymandering these districts. It's fairly obvious you're trying to get less people to vote. I'm still wondering when they're going to go after. I'm still wondering when they're going to go after DeJoy, that guy, for what he did to the post office at Trump's behest, and got rid of mailboxes and got rid of
mail sorting machines. Yeah,
this guy should be in jail. That's my opinion.
Yeah,
that kind of stuff. It's one thing to, maybe I don't know. I get.
No, I get it. Well, let's try to reel ourselves back in because, like you said, there's plenty of we can do. But go. Yeah,
here's another story that was very interesting that was from the Associated Press. Actually, this is about the Capitol. Capitol Police say they've uncovered intelligence of a possible plot by a militia group to breach the U.S. Capitol on Thursday, nearly 2 months after a mob of supporters of then-President Donald Trump stormed the iconic building to try to stop Congress from certifying now President Joe Biden's victory. The House canceled plans for a Thursday session after learning of the threat. The threat appears to be connected to a far-right conspiracy theory, mainly promoted by supporters of QAnon, that Trump will rise again to power on March 4th, which was yesterday. That was the original presidential inauguration day until 1933, after which it moved to January 20th. The announcement comes as the Capitol Police and other law enforcement agencies are taking heat from Congress in contentious hearings this week on their handling of the January 6th riot. Police were ill-prepared for the mass of Trump supporters in tactical gear, some armed, and it took hours for National Guard reinforcements to come. And by then, rioters had broken into the building, stalling Congress's certification effort temporarily, and sending lawmakers into hiding. The United States Capitol Police Department is aware of and prepared for any potential threat toward members of Congress or toward the Capitol complex, the agency said in a statement. We have obtained intelligence that shows a possible plot to breach the Capitol by an unidentified militia group on Thursday, March 4th. Police did not identify the group. An advisory sent earlier this week to members of Congress by Timothy Blodgett, the acting House Sergeant at Arms, said the Capitol Police had no indication that groups will travel to Washington, D.C. to protest or commit acts of violence. But that advisory was updated Wednesday morning. Blodgett wrote the Capitol Police had received new and concerning information and intelligence indicating additional interest in the Capitol for the dates of March 4th through the 6th by a militia group. Yeah. Well, before a House panel, acting Capitol Police Chief Yogananda Pittman said investigators had collected some concerning intelligence but declined to provide any details publicly. So we still got that going on.
Oh yeah, no, that's been this week pretty interesting to catch some of. Seeing that they really are kind of doing that post-mortem and seeing, I don't recall who it was, but it was some official, I believe, in the military who said that they had basically troops ready to go on the bus. This is I'm talking about January 6th. And they were sitting there, for a while. They were just waiting for that word to go, and they just couldn't get it. And now they're uncovering that maybe the former Trump appointee Michael Flynn's brother, a different General Flynn, may have had some involvement directly in the kind of calls that day, of distributing the resources of personnel. And now people are kind of wondering and scratching their heads, was there any political motivation to this? I know that was always the speculation, but now when you see someone like that kind of pulled into it, it may not be true, but at least the appearance is certainly concerning.
Well, when we spoke to, I believe we were speaking to the police commissioner. Mm-hmm. We spoke about how the Secretary of the Defense, I guess he's actually the Secretary of the Army, but that guy was going to go through all the armed services and look for extremism. And we basically got to the point where we said, one guy in the chain of command, it can be one person who either refuses to pick up the phone or does pick up the phone, but then doesn't follow through with what he was supposed to do. Something like that could stop the National Guard from getting to Washington, D.C. or anywhere else. That idea is what we're talking about here. How do you take care of that?
It's
that's
tough.
A toughie.
And yesterday, I heard, I believe it was the first, I think he was a formal appointee of Trump, former President Trump, to get now arrested and be investigated in this process. Somebody who worked under Mike Pompeo, apparently, got grabbed up, a staffer there. So, they're going to have to investigate again. Was that he there completely under his own volition, or, was there any, again, kind of guidance for maybe folks to be there? It's still so many questions, and it's crazy. And, there's so many.
It's also crazy, where do you draw the line sometimes? Some people said, well, I went to the Capitol, but I didn't go inside. I was outside.
No, exactly.
Okay.
And I don't want to verge on this too much, but, there is a long history in this country and other places of quote unquote civil disobedience. There's a time and a place, the MLK struggle, sit-ins, boycotts, and, all these types of things. This was not civil on the vast majority of people. When you start bludgeoning people, when you start, doing all these things, you bring bear mace, that's different. So there is going to be a need to sort out folks in charges, where if somebody happened to walk in and take a selfie, that's not good. But again, that's closer probably to some kind of, really ramped up trespassing charge than somebody who's beating someone with a fire extinguisher or, other types of harm being caused. So, I don't know. It's just insane to see that this is still, the thing we're having to litigate and figure out now. But the good thing is, I guess if we want to look at a silver lining, that there was concerns about yesterday being another type of event on social media and nothing came of it. So hopefully it kind of shows that their movement is, dwindling in its reach, both from the QAnon and from the other kind of.
Yeah, and some people were kind of upset, too, that Congress decided not to be in session yesterday because of that.
I understand, but I guess at the same time, they did a lot of the business, I think, the night before, and, they can stay later and do other things. So you don't want to give the opportunity to have that happen again. But granted, I don't have a tendency to think it ever will. I think that at this point, it'll be a good reason, at least from their perspective, to up the budget of Capitol Police and everyone who has any jurisdiction there. And I bet you, I've gone to DC many times with different, causes and groups and, been a part of like some lobbying and stuff like that. And, it's a normal process. It should be, again, accessible. But at the same time, I don't think it's going to be the way that it was. I think it's going to be, more security checks, more clearances, more things like that, probably even than it was.
Well, and I guess, that same kind of idea applies. I was thinking about, have they passed a law yet that says someone running for president has to turn in their tax return? Have they passed a law,
Well, that tax return was, I believe, obtained now. I think the...
oh, no, they got it now. I'm talking about 4 years ago when we were supposed to get it. Or 5 years ago. No one was ever under the impression that presidents did this just because they they had class, or they weren't hiding anything, or so now it appears we need a law that says you have to do that. I think that there are a lot of things like this that kind of fall under the radar that we assume are legislated laws that people have to follow. And we come to realize that none of that stuff is there. These are all just traditions and things that people would do when, yeah. We can't guarantee that anymore, I guess. I don't know.
Well, let's maybe turn to just a quick headline that might be a little bit optimistic. It looks like U.S. job reports say that it was a pretty strong month in terms of 379,000 jobs being added. And I know, hopefully locally, that is also going to have an impact. So that's something people might be interested in. Additionally, Bill, what else are you seeing? I know I thought you had an update on the PSG and the PSC. Do you still have that in front of you?
No, I don't have that in front of me.
It's okay.
Although, wait a sec. Actually, they're talking about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine that's on the horizon. I guess I don't know if New York has gotten any of that yet.
It has. It just started. The first person to get it was someone out, I believe, in Long Island, maybe Suffolk County at one of the Northwell facilities. The city is trying to pump it back in. I know Yankee Stadium overnight. I believe some of the other, again, city sites in Javits Center and Manhattan, that they have them now. And there's been a real big push, specifically, not just in communities of color, but anywhere where they know vaccine hesitancy is an issue, where any of these types of longitudinal, we have to get someone to come back and go through all the hassle and stuff. And seniors, I think that they're really trying to get it to those populations, so that they can just kind of have it be taken care of in the one dose. So it's been good news. Like I said, it's good to see that there's more options. I will say that I was surprised the other day. I was in just a civic meeting, and there was someone who worked in the Bronx at a Montefiore healthcare setting. And she was telling me that they had plenty of doses there, but she was amazed that only 31% of the staff who were eligible had actually taken the vaccine in the Bronx. So, even though it's there and everyone is, who wants it is clamoring for it, we need herd immunity. So there's still a lot more people in this equation that are going to need to figure out, where they're going to be comfortable and how. So maybe this helps them, the one shot. So we'll see.
I do think as more people get it, others will follow suit. And they realize, my mother did get sick. This one did get sick.
The other day I saw, Dolly Parton put out this interesting video. I know she was making the rounds on the news. And, I think the more you get those kind of characters who, aren't necessarily political people who, just kind of say it very matter of fact. I think that'll help, kind of have people say, okay, you know what? Again, let me just get this taken care of.
Someone recently said Dolly Parton for president. Because she spent $1 million of her own money to get the vaccine funded.
I'm pretty sure maybe she could run for governor probably pretty easily and win. I'm pretty sure that would be a thing. But I don't know. Traditionally, it's been a thing in politics, but the governor of New York used to be. They used to feel like as though that was the setup to become president of the United States. I guess Roosevelt. It was some of the players. That's exactly how they got to the White House. So now the governor of New York. That's like the stepping stone to the presidency. Yeah.
I don't know. You were talking before about Lee Zeldin and some of these other guys who were saying they're going to, obviously they stick their toe in the water to see if it's.
So you want to, test your name recognition and, see who would be interested in potentially kind of calling you for fundraising and stuff like that. But, I don't know. Again, there's going to be a big mayoral year in the city this year. But the next year, it's certainly shaking up to be pretty interesting to think that the once untouchable governor, in terms of kind of the security of his position, is certainly not that way anymore.
We got. We do have some other Long Island news here that we didn't really talk about. I have an article here. It's actually an editorial, but it's about the Suffolk police officers that are now in the spotlight for their behavior at a stop. They've been accused. Actually, the video pretty clear, and you can see it online.
Was that the one that I think Nicole Fuller and Michael O'Keefe reported with the officers with the assaulting suspected thief? Or okay. So do you want to lay that out? Because I'm not too familiar. I hadn't really heard that story yet.
Well, actually, there's an editorial from Newsday. I don't know if that's, but it does say it was hard to say what was more disturbing in the video of a handcuffed Christopher Cruz is his name, being pushed to the ground and kicked repeatedly by Suffolk County Police Department officers last week. We've seen this over and over again. I don't know how this is going to go down. I think it started with a couple of officers being put on modified leave, but now I think we're up to 15 because apparently others knew about it and said nothing. But I think the thing that we do, we always wait for, we're not going to jump on it. Let's wait and see what the investigation is, what comes out. Mm-hmm. There's a thing that they call, I forget, it's a protection for police officers in general. They have some kind of blanket immunity to a certain level. And they've been talking about rescinding that for law enforcement in general, because it's not immunity, but we've seen it over and over again. We see a traffic stop, we see a guy get hurt, and then 3 weeks later, the cops are walking free.
Well, like you said, qualified immunity and
qualified immunity. That's what I
know. I know they're talking about the CCRB, in Nassau, and I believe they have one out in Suffolk. Just another interesting, just quick hit. I was reading recently that I guess a watchdog group, and specifically, I believe the DMV, I think it's their Inspector General, have put out a report saying that there had been, it looks like, a number of local governments routinely misusing license plates. And just kind of speaking to, I know there's a big problem with placards in New York City, but I guess this seems to be a larger state problem. So that's just something, I guess, that's speaks to the fact of potential, misuse, whether it be police or elected officials of just kind of those semi-fringe benefits at times, that they can get, but might be, not being used the correct way. So that was something, I guess.
I don't get, what do you mean, license plates?
Yeah, I guess because they have additional specific license plates that are basically for some type of, again, like let's say like you have a district attorney, or let's say you have, I guess any type of person in that office that they can have, again, a license plate that the name has to belong to the agency which the vehicle belongs. So, it seems like there's something there. Obviously, we'll look into a little bit more, but there is a way, I guess, that people can try to report those issues if they see it. And we'll try to find out more about how you can do that and, just try to tamp down on any of those types of concerns of misuse of government resources and, other types of things like that.
I mean, like basically like swapping out plates so you can park someplace you normally couldn't park.
Something along those lines. Maybe we could try to have the watchdog group on to try to explain it a little bit more. I know that there's been some development out in Brookhaven. I guess the town, it looks like, had dumped pun intended, a plan to build some type of ash fill, I guess, to collect burned trash. I guess, I know that there's issues with the other utility companies. We talked about New York Water in the past. But another interesting story, I guess, looks like some more reporting by Nicholas Spangler was talking about the fact that although things are better with COVID, there still seems to be a number of veterans and staff who contracted COVID out in Northport at one of the VA hospitals there. So I know they were hit really hard earlier in the year. So it's certainly something that they want to see, if it's someone who the infections occurred because of, the protocols, or if it's something that was an isolated incident. So I know that they're looking into that. And that's important because we obviously want to keep our veterans and our seniors safe.
Well, I happen to know personally a few folks who have passed away from COVID in the last week. So
sorry to hear that, Bill.
Well, and just thinking about that, just kind of a shout out to all those people who, lost somebody, because the numbers didn't go away.
No, and to anyone who is a part of that number, you realize that it's not just a number. You're a family, your community members, your folks, whether you're a teacher or whether you're, a nurse or anything else. It certainly is is very tragic whenever it happens to anyone, even if it's just one person. So
I just had that thought in passing. The other thing was there's something with schools. Now that we have this remote learning thing, snow days apparently are going to be a thing of the past.
Yeah, that way I know we spoke about a little bit, and it's not just snow days, but it's even days where maybe the office is shut down because of the weather. Now you work from home.
Yeah.
There's no.
My question to the people in school was whether or not were the snow days a contractual thing, and if they were a contractual thing, I don't think the school district can just wave their hand and get rid of them. But what they kind of said to me was that we really don't have snow days. It snows and the school decides to close, and we call it a snow day, but we also pay it back at the end of the year. Mm-hmm. So we, in effect, don't have snow days. They just declare them that when we can't get to school.
No, I get it.
Okay, well, that's a bit of a difference. I thought you guys had 3 days set aside that were snow days. No, it doesn't work that way.
No, I hear you. I know we talked about that a little bit with Faith Jesse. Let me just make another quick update. We got to run in about maybe 2 minutes or so. But I did want to say that there is been an update. There is a state form now for homebound patients to try to get the vaccine at home. I don't believe, according to the reporting of today by Lisa Colangelo, that there is any specific coordinated program on Long Island yet. But I know in the city, they just started it in the Bronx and in Brooklyn. And there is a live form that if you do reach out to your elected's office, they can probably, connect you to and get you the information for. But the plan was to vaccinate homebound seniors at home along with their home health aides, because we know that that's obviously a big, important population that we don't want to get missed with this. So that's important. I wanted to make sure it was mentioned. If you have any more questions, definitely follow the reporting in Newsday, or, you can follow us on social media. And there's, like I said, there's signs of progress. There's good things, but there's also other things that clearly, need more attention. Yeah, exactly. So
anyway,
we'll keep doing that. We'll keep paying the attention. And, we thank everyone for listening. And
tell them where they can find us, John.
Of course, you can always find us on at This Week Long Island News on various social media platforms, podcasts, wherever you get it, at TWLI News also. And thanks again to Yancey Roy and to Newsday for giving us info, fresh off the press, as you'd call it. And like I said, always happy. And we'll have a next one with apparently, I think, Executive Laura Curran to give us another update on what I stand. So we look forward to that. And we might also hopefully have some other guests that day to tell us maybe some of the smaller elections. I know village elections are coming up too. Which is something that, to be honest, is not that I'm well versed in. So I definitely think it'd be good for listeners to find out more about the localist level of government as well. So thanks again.
The clock on the wall. The clock on the wall is screaming. John, I'll see you next time. Same time, same place. Thanks for all your digging and your work there. And we want to thank, of course, Yancey Roy and Newsday. And hey, we'll see you next time, same place, right here on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College.